because the next slide, the next few slides will be these beings that are not only up in the clouds, but they're also these statues of these very bizarre, what to me look like beings in some type of hazmat or a spacesuit. If you look at the goggles and the collars that are hermetically sealed and things like this, and in here you can see how there's definitely a glass window for an eye, and there is a person behind it. It's a complete suit. You've got fire or breath that's coming out of here, and then there is this tube that goes to a tank back here. And people say, well, this is just a mask. Well, my question is, where did the idea for a mask even come from? See, that's the first question that we should ask. Where did the idea for the mask come from? And yes, I know that, we want to look like animals and things like this, but all of a sudden, we have these other very bizarre looking statues, figurines of something very extraterrestrial looking. And of course, and that's what I wanted to say, that the skeptics say, well, why would extraterrestrials need spacesuits anyway? Are they as, technologically inferior or primitive as we are? And what a dumb question is that, or what a dumb statement, because when was the last time any of us, or even the astronauts, went to outer space or to the moon without a spacesuit? To suggest that extraterrestrials can just, travel through space naked, in my opinion, is nonsense. And if we subscribe to the idea of, harmful bacteria and things like this, you bet yourself that, of course, they would come here on Earth, revealing themselves wearing some type of a protective suit. Because if our bacteria, not if, but it is possible that our bacteria are harmful to their own being, to their constitution, to their whole, essence. So of course they would wear some type of a suit. And here we have the evidence. I mean, this is in Copan, Honduras, where you have these incredibly tall statues, all made of a solid block of stone. And this one right here, to me, looks very technical or technological in nature. Right next to it, and of course, what the critics are saying is that, oh, no, this person is just wearing some ceremonial garb with feathers and things like that. And you know what? I totally give you that, just not with this particular example or any of the other example that I showed you, because yes, there are statues that show people wearing ceremonial garb. There are statues where, with big headdresses full of feathers and things like that. There's absolutely no question about that. But right next to those statues, we have something that looks like this, where you have these very bizarre chest packs in most cases, and these angled arms that, are manipulating some controls on the front of the chest there. And mind you, none of these statues, none of these figurines were manufactured or carved by ETs. They were all made by our ancestors. But they were made after our ancestors either, number one, saw something, or number two, they were told a story about some bizarre creatures descending from the sky, and that is what they might have looked like. So if we have something like this that looks technological, but it's not 100% technological, it's because a human artist made this. Human artisans carved these statues. But there are examples where there is just no further explanation needed. Such as, can we go back or no? Yes. Such as this one. And even better, this is from Central America, Maya land. Or this one. I mean, I don't see an insect right here, or a fish. And then here, before I go talk about this one, I want you to look at this one right here. This is also from Central America, or actually from Mexico, Veracruz region. And it's basically one of my most favorite statues or carvings or figurines that I've ever found. I mean, look at the guy wearing some type of a skull cap. You've got 6 wings that he has, some type of a chest pack with tubes that are going out right here. His feet or his legs are inside what clearly looks like some type of a suit. Now, any of you from the East Coast, this is in New York City at the Museum of Natural History in the Maya or Central America department, and it's on display. And if you go there this summer, check it out. The little plaque underneath it says, God of Textiles. Now, right underneath it, it says, nothing is further known. And now I applaud whoever wrote that plaque that at least they didn't give us any additional garbage besides God of Textiles. Because what the heck does any of this have to do with textiles? Nothing. Okay? And, you know, you can clearly see that the guy is wearing a skull cap, and as if it's not even more obvious, that is a black man found in Mexico, in the Veracruz region of the Olmec Heads, all of which have black features. Nobody in mainstream archaeology admits that black people were in Mexico way before we gave them credit for. And not only did they come here, but they didn't come here on boats. They flew. Now go tell that to your history professor. I mean, if you look at the Olmec Heads, they're all African features. Yet mainstream archaeology, they say that the Olmec culture was nothing else but people sitting around a campfire, getting drunk, and then they just basically hammered out or constructed or manufactured these giant heads because that is what came to them in their dream. What is easier to suggest? That there was contact between cultures way before we are comfortable in accepting, or to say that, you know, it was all coincidence, that they carved something that they didn't even know existed on the other side of the world. But I want to go back to this statue right here. And what we have here is one of the earliest reproductions of the Indian god Ganesh. Now, everyone today knows Ganesh, one of the most famous Indian gods out there, with, you know, the big fat belly and the elephant head and the big ears, and of course the elephant trunk that comes down. And, you know, he's the god of finance or prosperity. So if you have a Ganesh in your house, you will become a multimillionaire overnight and things like that. But I want you to look at this, which, like I said, is one of the earliest representations of Ganesh. And if you look closely, what you have here is this guy that has a very odd-looking face, some type of panels up here, and he's holding an axe. And I want you to pay close attention to this. And of course, this little canister right here. Now, because this is one of the earliest representations of Ganesh, I need you to think about this from a logical perspective, that this here existed before the idea or the image of Ganesh that we have today. Does this look like an elephant to you? No, because Yes, there are some type of panels on his helmet or his hair, but this is most certainly not an elephant trunk, but it's some type of a breathing apparatus. And that, over time, got turned into an elephant's trunk. And thus, a simple extraterrestrial got turned into a fat elephant. I would be pissed if that would have happened to me. No, so this is what we have to do. We have to always go to the earlier or earliest source material, origin material that we can have access to. And the fact that this guy right here has, this breathing apparatus right here with this trunk, I mean, that's significant. And of course, some skeptic will say, yeah, but that's coincidence because that's in India and only over there and nowhere else. Well, I've got news for you, because right here we are in Tikal in Guatemala, and in the museum there is a stele which is about this tall, and I want you to pay close attention to this one, because if you look at the guy's arms, not only are they at an angle, but he's got these mittens that he wears, these very bizarre cuffs right here, and then there is this thing that comes down into a canister on the side, right here. And then look at the guy's boots. I mean, this is absolutely spectacular. I don't see any feathers. I don't see any tutus. I just see some type of technology that was misunderstood, carved by a quote-unquote ordinary human artist. I mean, look at this at the bottom here. These tubes coming out of his boots and all this gear that he's wearing. I think I have, yes. This is it's actual footage of that guy. And the only thing that's missing, unfortunately, is the guy's head, because it was broken off at the top. So it would have been really interesting to see, if the guy wore a helmet or something like that. But it's extraordinary. So two sides of the world, we have beings with some type of a trunk that goes, or a tube that goes into a canister. Now, just so you know, and I always like to regale my audience with what the mainstream likes to think, the scientists. In scientific or in the academic literature, this thing right here is referred to as the spine of that being right here. Now, I don't know if we have any chiropractors in this room, but if this is your patient, or if this were your patient, you'd be rich for life. You'd be set for life. Because I've been told that if somebody has a spine like this, they'll be walking like this at all time. And so, the nonsense just has to stop. That's all I have to say, that, where is the spine? Because look at the detail, look at the wonderful craftsmanship to suggest that our ancestors didn't know how to carve a proper spine. That is an insult to our ancestors, because they were accomplished craftsmen. They were accomplished artists. So to say that this artist, he just wanted to, throw us for a loop here by creating a spine like this so that eventually, we could have conferences like this, is absolutely ridiculous. And that's what they're suggesting. That, all right, this was just some dude, some artist that decided, oh, yeah. Let's, wait. Boots with tubes coming out of it. I mean, the guy didn't live in 1986 when everybody wore crazy clothes, but, this is old. So moving on. Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you, I think I've discovered the secret why the entire Maya civilization disappeared, or why they just died out. Because I think they all died of a heart attack while climbing their stairs. This here is, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. This is one of my favorite topics in the entire ancient astronaut field, and it's these funerary objects that have been found in South America, in Colombia, especially in the Tolima region of Colombia. And thousands and thousands of these small gold objects have been found inside tombs. And out of these thousands that, by the way, they look like fish and frogs and insects and birds and stuff like this, they found about 12, a dozen objects that look like this. And in 1998, two German engineers, one by the name of Dr. Algen Einboom. He's not an engineer, sorry. He's a dentist. He's a doctor. And then his colleague is an engineer, Peter Belting. They are hobby model plane builders. They built their own planes. They put propellers inside, and they go out on the weekends and fly them about. They decided that they were going to build a model plane of this. And here are some of the different models that we can find. And of course, this one is the most famous one because, these features do not exist in nature. Because what we have here is not only do we have a delta-shaped wing formation, but the wing formation is at the bottom. It's what's considered in aviation, it's called a low-wing airplane. And the reason why it's called low wing is because it's at the bottom of the fuselage. And so right there, if any of you are ever approached by anyone who says, oh yeah, I've seen this pin on George's lapel, or I've seen this and it looks like a fish or it looks like a bird, you can tell them, no, it doesn't, because in nature, all birds, insects, doesn't matter what animal or what insect, the wings are always attached to where we have our arms attached. And that's the shoulder girdle, which means up. That here is a low formation. That does not exist in nature anywhere. That's point number one. Point number two is the fact that no birds have vertical tail fins. They're all horizontal. No fish doesn't exist, has stabilizers like this. So, and see, here's the thing, that there are little funerary objects, or not a few, but thousands that have been found that do look like frogs, that do look like insects and birds and all these other creatures. But there are these few that look like airplanes. And you could argue that, yes, this one does kind of look like a crocodile, and I have no problem in admitting this. However, we have to remind ourselves that this was created by human hands. This was not crafted by E.T. the extraterrestrial. And so now there's an entire collection of all of them that have been found. I want you to pay close attention to this one. And by the way, Ivan T. Sanderson in the 60s, he actually tested these funeral objects inside wind tunnels, and they had perfect aerodynamic properties. And so that is why Dr. Einboom and Peter Belting decided to make models out of these things. And in the next couple of slides, this is the finished product right here that he built. And that's the other one. And so there's a propeller right here at the front. And there's also, and in this one right here, the propeller is actually inside. meaning it mimics a jet engine, because the moment you have a propeller inside, you draw in the air from the outside through a hole. Well, that mimics essentially a jet engine. So what happened, and like I said before, the propeller here is on the front. That's Dr. Imboom, Peter Belting. These are the two. And here you can see the actual propeller right in here. Our good friend Eric von Däniken with the originals, or replicas of the originals. And there it is in flight. You know, these are all truly amazing achievements, or not achievements, but objects that are a direct link to our past. Okay, we're going to go to one of my favorite places in the world. We're going to go to Bolivia, Pumapunku, actually. But before we do that, I just want to tell you guys that, you know, one of the big things in the whole ancient astronaut theory is that when people say, oh yeah, you're one of these people who says that our ancestors couldn't do anything, that they were all just aided by extraterrestrials, and they were dumb, and they didn't have any human ingenuity, and things like that. And that's simply not true, because of course our ancestors knew very well how to cut stone, for example. And here is a perfect example. This is in Greece, and you can tell, or you can see, that this stone here obviously has been cut. And in fact, you can see the tool marks or the saw marks where this stone was cut. Here and here, you see the blade or whatever they used intersecting. Now, the problem is that what we have here is very soft stone. And yes, this is in Greece, but I could care less about this, because it's not very ancient and it's soft rock. I really don't care about cutting limestone, because anyone in here can cut limestone with their little nail on their pinky. What I'm interested in is this. Here we are in the highlands of the Andes in Bolivia, on the border between Bolivia and Peru, right next to Lake Titicaca, which is the highest navigable lake in the world. It's absolutely beautiful. It's situated at a very high altitude, about 12,500 feet. So the air up there is very rarefied. You gotta go and walk really slowly, otherwise you'll keel over. And there we have there's a world famous site called Tiwanaku. And Tiwanaku every day is visited by at least 100 tourists. And it's gorgeous, it's wonderful. It has these magnificent gates that are, you know, made out of solid pieces of granite and things like that. But they have dozens and dozens of carvings on them, and glyphs that have been translated. Well, not really, but, you know, people are working on it. But only 150, 200 yards away, we have another field of ruins. That's this right here, which is Pumapunku. And at Tiwanaku, which is only 200 yards away, like I said, you've got lots of carvings and statues and glyphs that will yield eventually some type of message. But at Pumapunku, you have absolutely nothing except for some of the biggest stones that have ever been assembled in our history of this planet. And the one thing that really is fascinating to me is that the stone that's used up there is granite. And we have the family of granite with igneous rocks, so you have diorite, andesite, you know, really, really hard stone. The only stone that is harder than granite or diorite that I just mentioned, andesite, is quartzite and diamond. Today, in our mills, we use diamond-tipped drills and diamond-tipped saws in order to cut our, kitchen countertops. And here we have these incredible, incredible platforms that some weigh over 800 metric tons they're just laying about up in 12,500 feet altitude, where we still don't know how this ever fit together. And these platforms, they're massive. Now, I want you to pay close attention to this. When I showed this, and I'm sure some of you have seen this in one of the Ancient Aliens programs, but when I showed this photo here to a real-life stonemason, his name is Roger Hopkins. He lives in Palm Springs. He has his own quarry there. He cuts stone for a living every single day. I showed him this, and I said, okay, what would it take for you to recreate something like that? And he looked at it and he said, not for any amount of money or time would he ever volunteer to even attempt to recreate this. He pretty much said it can't be done unless you have very sophisticated computer technology. And of course, our ancestors, according to the mainstream archaeologists, they did this with chicken bones and with string. I mean, look at this wonderful, wonderful curve right here. The deviation between what the round cut that has been made here and the round cut over here is 0. Both sides are identical. Today, we can only do this with machines. This thing was not polished. And what is this? You have this block that's just standing around with a perfect groove going down, and every few centimeters you have a hole that has been drilled inside with a chicken bone, obviously, into a diorite block where if you were to use your thumb and go down this groove and apply just a little bit of pressure, you will cut yourself. And I'm speaking from experience. I have cut myself on that groove right here. Now, I don't know, has anyone in here been to Puma Punku, by the way? Raise your hand. Hardcore. I like that. Good stuff. So you know that, these stones, they look kind of weathered. They're very old, obviously, but they look weathered, meaning that you would think they're all very, rough to touch, that they're rough to the touch, but they're not. In fact, most of the stones, especially the ones that are worked, like this one, if you touch it, it's as if you were to touch a bathroom mirror. That is how smooth the surfaces are of these rocks, which means that at some point, in all likelihood, they've been exposed to a process called vitrification. And vitrification is something that we still use today in stone quarries and that builders use, where what you can do is you can liquefy a piece of rock by heating it up to its magma state, like at the volcano, and then pour it into a prefabricated or into a pre-made negative, and you leave it in there, or a mold, and you leave it in there overnight or doesn't matter, and after that, the stone, if you wait, it hardens back into the shape of that mold. And that is what we have at Puma Punku, because we have something that's referred to as the H blocks. And I love these guys, because about 7 of these H blocks have been found not in this arrangement. That's just, archaeologists who have found them and put them in that row, but that's not how they were found. But these H blocks, this here is the front, this here is the back, and this here is a diagram of one of the first measurements that were taken from these H blocks from I think it's 1917. It's on some of the next few slides of some of the first people that went up there with, measuring devices and things like that. So, look at the sophistication of these blocks. See, you see it like this, it's extraordinary. But if you see it like that, it's like, yeah, whatever, kind of. Even though it's still extraordinary, but if you look at the detail of all these corners, and each and every one of these blocks does not have a single centimeter or millimeter of deviation, meaning they're all identical, which could only have been done if they were machined. This was not done with a chicken bone. This was not done with a leather cloth and polishing. Not even over a period of 100,000 years. Because that's always the big argument of the skeptics. Well, they had time. Guess what? They didn't. Because they were looking for food. They were looking for shelter. And yeah, in my free time, I'm going to build this? I don't think so. So what's really cool about this is that when we fed these things into the computer, this is a very retro 1990s computer thing, one of the first ones that we did. They fit together like Lego blocks, and they built this amazing, almost impenetrable wall. This is another block that was also found at Pumapunku. I want you to look at this conical hole that has been drilled or worked into the block. Look at this corner right here, all these inboxes, and then what is this part right here? Why is there a round cut-out portion of that rock? Look at this one. These are absolutely insane pieces that have absolutely nothing to do with rituals, with any type of worship, or being infatuated with a flower. So, it's what is this? For what? Now, if you ask the local population there, they're still alive, the Aymara Indians, and they're these wonderful, wonderful people who, I'm sure you've seen them. They are the ones who have built these boats made out of reed and straw that are absolutely magnificent, and they're floating about Lake Titicaca, and you can actually stay on those boats as a hotel, and it's really something that I would urge you to do. It's absolutely great. Now, if you ask them, because they're very adamant about their oral traditions, when you ask them, well, so who built this Pumapunku? What went on there? They will say, well, we pretty much stumbled upon Pumapunku the way it is back in the day, meaning in ruins. Meaning, yes, even when we got there, this place already was in ruins. Because the mainstream archaeologists are saying that it was the Aymara Indians who built this place. And when you ask the Aymara Indians, did you guys build this? They will say to you, no, it wasn't us. We came to this place, and this place already lay in ruins. And when you then ask, well, if it wasn't you, who built it? And without any hesitation, they will point to the sky and say, Los dioses, the gods. Yet mainstream archaeology says that what the Aymara Indians are saying, that they didn't build this, they're wrong. Now, who is insulting whom here? And it has nothing to do with human ingenuity. It really has to do with capacity, because we today, and let me just show this one more time, we today pretty much cannot replicate this. And by the way, it says down here, 8,400 kilograms, that's 8.4 metric tons. So that's a big, big car. Actually, it's more cars. A car is like 1.5 tons, so it's like 10 cars. The weight of 10 cars or something like this. I mean, one way or the other, it doesn't matter. It's absolutely insane, because this is diorite and it cannot be worked with chicken bones. And of course, you know, another thing is the whole idea that all of this was transported with wooden rollers and things like that. Well, you know, if you remind yourself what I just said, we're at 12,500 feet, which means we're way above the natural tree line. After a certain altitude, trees no longer grow. The higher you go up, the more inhospitable it becomes. There are no trees here. There never were any trees here. So to suggest what some archaeologists are doing, that this entire area was, you know, suffered deforestation, don't listen. I mean, listen and then laugh. That's another very interesting piece that is in Cusco, just like that. It's called El Tesoro, or the safe deposit box by the locals. And it sure looks like some type of a, you know, vault. But what was it used for, or what's the origin of it? Who knows? The perfect Inca walls, or actually pre-Inca walls, let's keep that straight, in Cusco, where you can't put a dollar bill in between the fittings. Look at this one. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 corners. And this was all just done arbitrarily? I mean, you can't have... Does anybody work in construction here? Raise your hand. Okay. You can't be on a construction site and say like, hey, Johnny, I just need this stone that fits right into here. Oh, yeah, let me here. Throw it over. This requires planning. This is deliberate. This is not coincidence. When I asked some archaeologists, because by the way, similar walls not only exist in Cusco, but also in Greece, on Easter Island, in Egypt, and we'll see this later, all around the world, and they're all identical walls. And when I asked some archaeologists, well, you know, how come they built like this? They say, oh, well, because it was the easiest. Why does that person have a degree? This is easy? No, it's mind-boggling. So you can see, by the way, there's no binding agent in between these rocks, so, but they fit together perfectly, where you can't put a blade, as you can see, but also you can't put in a dollar bill in between these blocks. And then here, this is in Kenco, also in Peru, where it seems as if the entire side of this wall has been sheared off like with a butter knife. Also here, this all looks very rough, especially the parts that have been cut. Obviously, this is, natural up here, but the parts that have been cut, if you were to, this is in Saksahuaman, if you were to go touch this with your hand, it's as smooth as a bathroom mirror. Again, to show you this, and then I show you the stuff from ancient Greece, this is not what I'm interested in, because this is not granite, this is not diorite. So the question is, how was it done? Did some type of sophisticated machining or machinery, was it used? And not only am I saying yes, but I'm going to prove it to you. Here we are in Ollantaytambo, the back entrance of Ollantaytambo in Peru. All the tourists, they go out the front entrance. So when you go there this summer or next summer, actually go in the winter because it's their summertime in winter. So when you go to Ollantaytambo, make sure you ask to go in the back entrance and, to look at this stuff right here. Because in the back entrance, it looks as if you have a type of a quarry here. And it really is a quarry because, these stones were cut out. Now, I want you to look at this very closely because what we have here is a physical impossibility. Because it's very easy, quote unquote, very easy, to cut out the top block right here. Because essentially what you would have to do, even with technology that we have today, you would lower a blade here, you would lower a blade at the bottom, you would lower a blade on the right-hand side, and then you would lower a blade on the back to release the block. Now, look at the bottom one. Do you see how there is no access point from the top to the bottom, meaning that this bridge is completely intact? Okay, so we cut here, here, and here. And then what? And as if they knew that one day we would be puzzled by all of this, they said, let's make it really fun. And put the block right next to it. This thing right here was in there. There is not a single millimeter of material loss anywhere. Okay, so this had to have, required some type of sophisticated technology. And if you're going to ask me what it was, I'm telling you right now, so don't ask the question later, please. I have no idea what it was. All I know is that some type of machinery was used because I'm about to show you evidence for the machinery. In this same area, there is a walkway, not a walkway, but it's kind of like this switchback that you can go up the side of the mountain. You can't suffer from vertigo or anything like this because as you go higher, you start down here, you go up the steps, then you go this way over here, and you come over this way. And then at some point, the ledge becomes so narrow that you pretty much have to press yourself against a wall and do this, and your toes, they're like in midair. And then you go higher, and you come to a place like this, where this section of the bedrock or the face of the mountain was cut out in a round fashion. And this is at the bottom. This is down here. If you were to step up here and look down between your feet or towards your feet on the ground, that is what you see. That is a machining signature. That is not spiritual power. That is not a chicken bone. That is not frozen water. It's machines that were used. Some type of blades, some type of lasers. Who the heck knows? But this is a machining signature. Now, especially if you look that some of these blades go into the rock or into the part that was cut out. In Egypt, and I'm just going to forward this because I would like to answer some questions. In Egypt, we also have machining signatures in rock where nobody looks at these things and they say, well, it's just there. Yes, exactly. It's there. Look at it. This is the Osirion in Egypt, these magnificent giant stones that if you were to stand right here, you would barely reach to this area right here. And that these are massive, massive pieces of granite. This is not limestone that, most of the other items in Egypt have been built with. This is granite. This here is in Greece, where this perfect cone-shaped temple, not temple, but it's a treasury apparently, was built with perfect acoustics. If you look at this lintel stone right here, it goes from over here all the way to over there, all the way over here. It has been estimated to be 250 tons. This is the Wall of Crows in Egypt. I mean, stone blocks the size of railway cars. Then you have one of the sarcophagi at the Serapeum in Saqqara. There's some dude standing right there, cowered inside. The lid itself weighs about 6 tons. And now if you remember this, and now I should have had this earlier, but if you remember this machining signature, the next slide I'm about to show you is from Egypt. Now, if that is not the remnant of a blade going through that rock, then, I'm going to quit my job right now. I mean, look at this. And when I showed this to Roger Hopkins, he said it's unmistakable. Some type of a blade went through there, and not a chicken bone. Very famous Baalbek in Lebanon. This is a guy right here. Look at these stones. There's a guy right here. Look at these stones. This is in a site in Baalbek, Lebanon called Heliopolis. And yes, it was a Roman temple at the height of the Roman Empire. And yes, there are Roman columns there and Roman inscriptions and what have you. But the Romans themselves said that we are building on top of a way, way older structure that was not only known to the Greeks, but also to the Egyptians and, of course, to the Sumerians. And the whole idea that the place is called Heliopolis, City of the Sun, is only because, not only, but is exclusively because a long time ago, that was one place where allegedly the sun descended from the sky and interacted with mankind. Well, the sun doesn't do that, but some ET might. So this entire base, this right here, this to me is the crown. This takes everything. This stone starts over here, goes all the way over there. We don't even know where it ends. People have estimated that this rock alone, this corner rock, this slab, this platform, weighs over 1,750 tons. our strongest cranes in the world peter out at 1,200 tons. Done. We can't lift anything heavier than 1,200 tons. But this was done with a pulley and strings. Yeah. Sure, right? And I'm just kind of breezing through this because I would like to answer questions, but I always finish my lectures with what I still think, even after 40 years of Chariots of the Gods, that it is one of the best pieces of evidence, one of the most clear pieces of evidence in regards to visits of extraterrestrials in the ancient past, and that is in Palenque, Mexico. At the Temple of the Inscriptions, there is a chamber underneath it, and I urge any one of you to go there once in your lifetime, where when they first discovered this pyramid, they were, of course, looking forward to treasure, and in order to access this chamber that was in the ground, they had to not only go up there and free everything from the jungle, but at the same time, when they got at the very top here, at the entrance point, the stairs that go inside into the ground, into the chamber here in the ground, this stairwell was completely filled with rubble. So painstakingly, stone by stone, rubble by rubble, they had to remove everything, and they finally stood in front of a door, and it was this triangular door, and they opened that as well. And then what they found right there was, and this is basically the way it looks. It's a bit misleading. This is not inside the pyramid. It's underneath the ground, and the pyramid was actually built on top of this chamber. So they had to come down, free everything, and there's the triangular door, and then they saw this incredible stone coffin with this incredible lid that looked like this. Oh, let's go back, sorry. And what they found there was the Palenque slab, which I'll show you later, looks amazing, and I'll tell you later why. But when they opened that triangular door, see, today we don't know how old that chamber is because, unfortunately, when they opened that door, all they saw was that sarcophagus, and they wanted to access it immediately for the treasure or, for the excitement. So instead of, taking their time, because when they opened the door, the entire room was covered in stalactites and stalagmites. Meaning, stalactites and stalagmites, you can count or you can determine their age just like you can determine the age of a tree by not counting by counting the tree rings. And with the stalactites and stalagmites, you can determine the age by the thickness of these towers that they're hanging from the sky, from the ceiling, and connecting to at the bottom. And what did they do? They just took the crowbars with which they opened up the door and just started to hammer away at these stalactites and stalagmites, and thus forever and ever losing the opportunity to figure out or to determine how old this chamber is. And now, when archaeologists saw this for the very first time, and still today, this is the paradigm or the dogma that we have going on. This is King Pakal as he is being swallowed up by the underground monster. It's his journey to the underworld. And so what they're saying is that, this is the snake or the monster, and it's opening up its jaw, exposing one tooth here and one tooth over here. And he's being swallowed up, but don't despair. As he dies and he is swallowed up, a tree of life grows out of his belly, thus ensuring his survival. the hell is a tree of life? It's a hollow phrase. It doesn't exist. It's something that we came up with in, behind closed doors, in university rooms and things like this. I mean, it does not exist. This over here, of course, is the cut-off tail of a rattlesnake, and there is two. And what we think looks like an exhaust are the stylized beard hairs of a rat. Yeah, I totally see it. Now, interestingly enough, when Linda Sheely translated the band of hieroglyphics around this sarcophagus lid many, many years ago, she did actually say that, yes, that the hieroglyphics do say that this is King Pakal's journey to the underworld, Xibalba, which is the underworld in the Mayan language. But now I'm going to show you something else, and then I'm going to return to that thought, and I will tell you that she essentially retracted all of her research pertaining to the underworld a few months before she died. And I'm about to tell you what that is. But to me, what's interesting is that, when you see this, obviously there's also, when you come in that chamber, this is where you come in, so you basically see it in this fashion, as in going up. And when I see something like this, people like me, with a lot of fantasy and ideas, I go immediately to other places in the world, because that's the great thing about the ancient astronaut theory, that you can make or draw all these correlations between, or connections between other cultures. And when I see something like this, in this position, then immediately I see this bell or dome-shaped feature right up there. And I'm reminded of Indonesia. In fact, I'm reminded of Borobudur, which is one of the most sacred Buddhist sites in the world. And what we have here are these dome-shaped figures. They're called stupas. And inside each stupa, there is a Buddha. And a stupa translated into English, one of the translations is a chariot of the gods, or a chariot with which to reach the godly realm, or the realm of the gods, actually. And by the way, just so it's on the record, I am not saying, nor have I ever said, or would I ever suggest that Buddha was an extraterrestrial. Nonsense. Of course he was not an extraterrestrial. But we have all these stupas pointing to the sky, and then we have these stories about the stupas having been vehicles with which to reach the realm of the gods. And by the way, the realms of the gods were reached way before Buddha ever existed. I mean, the whole interaction between man and gods took place very far back. I mean, 2,000 years ago and 3,000 years ago, that's fairly quote-unquote young. We're talking long time ago. But when I see something like this, the bell-shaped figure, the bell-shaped object, and the pointy thing up there, and having to do with the realm of the gods, well, we have that right here. And so my question is it possible that all around the world, at pretty much the same time, people witnessed something like this? And I really think they did, because some of these beings were here. Oh, I forgot, the Linda Sheely thing. She retracted her knowledge or her research by saying the correct translation of Xibalba, underworld, is not the underworld, but the Milky Way. So, what we have there is a depiction of ruler Pakal on his journey, not to the underworld, but to the Milky Way. And then how much more easy can it get? So you have all these statues and questions about, what was written or described in the Old Testament, it certainly wasn't God. It was a misunderstood extraterrestrial. I'm still a very deep believer in God. But my God is not a God of fear. And, you do this or else, or by the way, while you're at it, go kill your own son. I mean, those are the ravings of a lunatic or of an extraterrestrial. So, the big question is, what were these creatures? Who were these beings? And, these angelic, quote-unquote, beings with the wings that we now call angels and things like, or actually not call them, but we've misinterpreted them into, they've been bastardized into angels and divine beings. Whether or not our entire system of belief is based on a complete misunderstanding. And whatever you do, don't die wondering and always crack the code. Thank you very much.